Welcome to The COVID Effect, a podcast mini-series brought to you by The Razor's Edge. In this series, we talk to music industry insiders delving into the effects the COVID pandemic has brought upon each guest's field within the industry. In episode 2, Paul talks to Adam, director of the Noise Cartel. The company is a music PR firm specialising in the heavier end of the market. Paul and Adam discuss how the pandemic affected the company and the work they do, what changes they've made over the past year, and the possible route back to normality. Over to Paul and Adam in the Razor's Edge virtual studio.
Well, welcome to the Razor's Edge, and thank you for taking the time today. Do appreciate it. Let's start off with a little bit about the Noise Cartel and what it actually is and what your role there is, because people listening to this will probably not be familiar with, although they'll be familiar with the name, they might not be familiar with what you guys do. So give us a potted history and what your actual key roles are.
Sure. So the Noise Cartel is basically a specialist music PR firm, and specialist because we're specialising in the music that we most like and love, which is the heavier end of the scale.
Yeah.
So if it's descended from Black Sabbath, the Sex Pistols, or Led Zeppelin,
yeah,
and everything else that came after it, it's probably loud guitars, bit of noise. That's probably up our street. So yeah, we basically are trying to get cool bands that we love into the music media. Magazines, websites, on the radio, on TV, and anywhere else that might shout about them.
Yeah. And what's your actual role within that? Are you the overall head honcho, or are you part of it? How does it work?
Yeah, so I'm the director. So I started the company 13 years ago after a few years doing various other jobs in the industry. I used to work at a record label, and then I did some tour work as well. And I played in bands as well. But yeah, I didn't decide to start a press company. I decided to try and do more marketing, which was what my background was in. But nobody wanted to pay me to spend their money. So I ended up... and I was getting asked about press a lot, so I thought I'd give it a go. And so the Noise Cartel ended up becoming a PR company. It wasn't the plan. I just thought it was a cool name, the Noise Cartel. I'll figure out what we do later. But yeah, it turns out we're quite good at doing press, so that's what we do now. So it started, it was around 13 years ago with just me, and then I brought on Nelly, who is she's our head of promotion, and basically is our supreme goddess of radio. That's what I loosely describe her as. So there was two of us for a while, and then we've grown to 5 people now. There was 6 for a brief period, but it's now 5 again. And we've got Donna, who is our head of press, and she looks after press and online for loads of cool bands, and Tristan, who's a press officer, who's also doing the same, and Nelly, who I mentioned, who handles radio and TV, and Sam Robinson, who joined us recently from Holy Raw Records after they closed down.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little team, and
good. And I know most of them because obviously I've been interviewing for some time, so I'm in communication with a lot of them. So it's nice to actually get an idea of where they fit. And I was looking. Obviously, anyone that looks at your website will be they can't fail to be impressed with the list of bands that are on your artists page, because you've got everything from the stadium size of Rammstein, the arenas of Parkway Drive and Sabaton, down to the really small club bands of people like Wyderdode and people like that. So how do you actually get someone on board? How does it work?
Well, there's a few ways that we might end up working with an act. So most of our work will come from just a small pool of record labels. So Century Media Records, we look after all the promotion for their artists, and Sumerian Records. So I'd say probably maybe 3/4 of our work is probably from those two labels.
Okay.
And the good thing about having that sort of level of commitment from them is that when we do take on other projects, we can afford to be really picky and really go for the stuff that we think are like, right, this is, yes, we should be doing this as well. So it's nice to not be in a situation where it's like, you know, you have to take on a certain amount of work just to get a certain amount of money to pay everyone. We're actually able to be a bit more picky. So those kind of jobs will come from a combination of, sometimes we just find stuff that we like and go after it. So something might come up on a you know, YouTube ad roll, or maybe a Spotify playlist or something. And if we see that they don't have a PR team in place already, we might, you know, reach out to them, see if there's a manager in place or a record label involved, or even just social media. And then we also get a lot of submissions. So people will, you know, I guess they've looked at the website and decided that they want to be one of the bands on the website too, and see if, you know, get some PR for them. So we get a lot of, you know, incoming requests to look at stuff, and we do take on stuff that way, although I would have to say that we turn away a lot more than we take on.
Okay.
So there's, you know, just because I think a lot of bands will approach you, they'll think, right, we've recorded something, we should be in all the magazines now. It's like, well, you've got a bit more work to do actually, and sometimes we'll give a little bit of advice as well, like, because there's some great bands out there that there's nothing wrong with their music. It's just there's no point trying to do press yet because they've got, you know, 100 fans on Facebook and not many streams, and it's like, well, you'd be wasting press at this point. You want to do it when there's a little bit of momentum and a bit more of a story to talk about. So
thank you. That's really interesting, and we could talk about that for another day. We could talk for ages about how the whole mechanisms work. But today we're going to talk a little bit about the shitstorm that we've been in for the last 12 months or so, and a little bit about how it's impacting as part of a series that we're doing at the Razor's Edge on the impact across the metal world in all shapes and sizes. And I was just wondering earlier on, when I was thinking about doing how to phrase the questions, this time last year, obviously we had the first inklings that something was going to happen. What was your workload looking like at this time last year? Is February traditionally a time when you're gearing up to do quite a lot, because a lot of bands start to release stuff in the spring? Did you have a very big, I was going to say order book, but you know what I mean by that in terms of stuff that you're dealing with?
It's actually, this is a really good question, because I remember in February and beginning of March feeling completely overwhelmed by how much work I had coming up. There was a lot of work, a lot of releases, a lot of bands touring, you know, there was the festival season on the horizon, and that's always very busy, like a lot of activity bottlenecks into a, you know, very small period. And I had quite a few trips as well that I had, like, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, because I'm not complaining, because it's amazing that I get to do this stuff. But, like, you know, on my horizon, I had like a week in Norway around the Inferno festival conference thing there. I had a festival in Taiwan that I was supposed to be going to, and there was a couple of other things, and then loads of tours. And I was actually looking at my calendar like, this is insane. How am I going to do everything? And I never, and you know what, it gets like that every year, although it felt particularly bad this year, but you always get through it. But there's no way I could have, you know, I always feel like I got this, my answer wished, but not like the way I wanted it to. Like, you know, like, oh, it would be nice if it wasn't this insane, and then suddenly, you know, it was a very rapid change. You know, it was like, oh, things were going to probably be pushed back for a few months, and then it became apparent that it was going to be longer than that, and now it's like a couple of years. So, yeah, once the COVID stuff properly kicked off and people were going into lockdowns and stuff like that, it suddenly went from all this, like, you know, just crazy busy periods to, like, just nothing. Just absolute... God. It was so weird. Like, suddenly, we actually took the decision to shut the offices before they recommended that, or before they locked down, basically. You know, we were looking at what was going on in other countries, and like, why are we not doing anything about this. Like, well, maybe we should. So I sent everyone home and said, let's just keep an eye on things, and maybe we'll be back in the office in a couple of weeks. I mean, it seems mad to think about now that we thought, it'll all be over in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Because surely our government will have this under control. Not let this, just completely ruin everything. That was overly optimistic. But yeah, it went from being like really busy to it's just so quiet. Like the summer was really bizarre because usually there's a lot of festivals and there's a lot of activity around festivals. So you've got bands releasing singles, occasionally albums, but usually some singles and new videos or whatever. And then they'll do a festival tour and they might do a few smaller shows around those festival appearances. And then you've also got the other things that come around those times, like Radio 1 will do their Radio 1 rock stuff, and usually we're lucky enough to have a band participate in that. And you usually have the Kerrang Awards or the Metal Hammer Awards. There's like all this stuff that happens around, but mostly around downloads. Obviously none of that was there. So the summer was extremely quiet, and then we noticed in September it started to pick up a bit, and I think people who'd been sat on records thought, well, we can't wait indefinitely, let's just get on with it. So now it's in terms of like work, it's now starting to feel a little bit more like it was, except there's no gigs or festival or even artists in town, because that's another thing that we would do a lot of is promo days, where we'd have an artist in town for a day and we'd set up interviews with people like yourself and all the other medias, and that's not happening now as well. It's very strange. It's become this is a really social job. It's why I love doing it. I just love meeting people, talking to people, and talking about music with people. And now it's just become I would probably do most of my my most efficient work was always done in a pub. I'd sit down with an editor or a manager or an agent or from whatever, like, all right, we're working on this band together. What ideas can we exchange? What cool stuff can we do? And it would be really productive. After a couple of beers, the magic starts coming out. People have silly ideas that then become reformed into actually really good ideas. And, I'm not doing any of that anymore. Not taking people out to see bands at gigs and that kind of thing. It's just all very... Hi, would you like to review this? Would you like to do an interview? This has become really admin based, basically.
Sure. So you talked about taking the decision early on to close the office. And obviously, I'm assuming most of the team are able to work from home at the moment today. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah. I mean, we're lucky that we were fairly well set up to do that anyway. So we're all working off laptops, even in the office, because, often we'd have to go to a promo day and it's just handy to have all your stuff with you. So that it wasn't that difficult, really. I definitely missed the in-office vibe, like it is different when you're, you can sit round a table together, or where our office is above a pub, so we would often make use of that. And that kind of thing is gone now. We don't have that. Sorry, excuse me, it was really disgusting. You don't need to say what you just saw there. It's practically speaking, it's fine, right? We can do everything we need to do. We do Zoom calls. We've got Slack. We're quite well set up to work with each other. I have to go into the office and pack orders, which is something that I hadn't had to do for quite a while. But that's fine. It's not actually that difficult, really. We're fine in terms of keeping everything going and doing everything that needs to be done.
Yeah, sure. And did the team ever go back to the office, or have they been away from the office for the whole period of time?
We've not been, like, even when they were encouraging everyone to go back to the offices over the summer, we did. No one did. I mean, I think we met up a couple of times in the office, but it wasn't like people going into work every day like normal,
Yeah.
I've been going in once a week just to collect the mail and make sure everything's there, and quite proud of the fact that I've managed to keep 4 plants alive throughout.
That's impressive.
It is impressive because, like, before this pandemic, I don't think I'd ever kept a plant for more than a year. But like this, I don't know why, I just had this newfound sense of responsibility. Like, I'm going to get through COVID, and these plants are going to live.
Yeah.
If that's the one positive contribution I make to the world throughout this, it will be these 4 plants did not die due to the office being shut. Brilliant. So.
And obviously, as the director, you have some responsibility for the welfare of your staff. How have they been? You've said you've been talking to them on Zoom and stuff, and I'm lucky enough that my day job is in this room, apart from when I was travelling to meetings or to go and do some training or whatever. So apart from the fact that I'm not having to get up at 5 o'clock to catch a train to London, everything else has been relatively samey for me, apart from that piece of travel. But in terms of keeping this team together, there's been quite a lot of coverage about mental health impact and everything else. I mean, obviously you are fully committed to supporting your staff. How have you managed to do that? Is it just been through what everyone else has been doing? Are you conscious of that?
I am very conscious of it, and I think that I don't think I've had any kind of company policy or approach, or we're going to be doing these activities to try and, I don't know, distract people or whatever. But I do, if I sense that somebody, because everyone's, we're all in the same storm, but we're all on different boats.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like one person might be living completely by themselves on their own. Another person might be living with their husband or wife. Another person might be living with, on their own with the kids. Everyone's got a different circumstance. And so I think at different times people are going to be feeling different strains. So I try to keep an eye on that. And if I get the sense that someone is struggling, then I'll just call them up and talk to them and just be like, look, are you okay? Is there anything we can help with?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need some time off? Do you need us to take over anything? That kind of thing. So it's more of a kind. We're a small company, so I don't have like this big human resource structure and blah blah. It's just me, really, saying, "Are you okay?" And I mean, I appreciate not everybody might not want to be as forthcoming with their boss as they might be with other people, but I feel like that's as much as I can do. Is like, look, are you okay? Is there anything we can help with? And I do also try to, I speak to like half the team, the half that I work the most closely with every day.
Yeah.
As a company, we will have a weekly meeting, and then I try and encourage a couple of other things. Like we had, it's been ages, but we actually, had a Zoom drinks last week because there's been some great campaigns lately. The team has been doing really good work, so I thought it'd be good to get on Zoom and toast that. Also, what I do need to do though is send everyone a pub in a box, because usually I'd take them down to the pub.
I was going to say you get away with having, you don't have to buy a round, do you?
No, well, I do though. I feel like I should buy a round, but it's just a little bit trickier because it's not, buying a round in a pub, that's easy. Hi, can I have 5 Stellas, please? Yeah. But sending 5 Stellas to 5 different houses, I think I just need to sort of. I think Signature Brew do this thing called Pub in a Box. I think maybe I'll have to send everyone one of those. But yeah, it's been, I try to keep an eye on stuff like that as much as I can. The one thing that I can say that I'm really proud of is that I haven't had to ask anybody to take home any less money, or haven't had to make anyone redundant or do anything like that. And to me, that's like, if we get through this like that, that is success to me. I started 2020 very positive and ambitious, right, this is going to be a great year, we're going to do all this, and then obviously the world turned on its head, and so now my approach is, well, if we survive this, that's success. That's like, I'm happy. I'd be happy with that. If this is all intact, when we come out the other side of this, then great. happy days.
Sure. Great. I wasn't here to put you on the spot about buying your team a pint, but
No, I want to. Here's the thing, though. It's like if I could have just clicked a button and send everyone, and it would I'd have done it. But I think I need to set up 5 different orders with them, and also not everybody likes beer. I think like people like different things, and
it becomes.
I've said it now. You're probably going to include this in the interview, and if they listen to it, I'll be getting. So Adam, by the way, I like fruity cider. I'll have the prosecco, and it's fine, guys. Just tell me what you want to drink and where I'm sending it.
Okay,
that's only open to Noise Cartel employees. Not all your listeners. Yeah, just to be clear on that.
So what about the impact on the bands? Obviously, everything kind of dropped off. You had, as you've already said, you had loads of tours. I mean, the one that immediately springs to mind is we had Rammstein back in the country. You had huge, and living where I live in South Wales, we actually had them come into Cardiff, which was incredibly exciting. And it was on a Sunday, and the Rock Club in Cardiff had a full day planned, and the Rock Club is about 5 minutes walk from the stadium, and all of that.
Is that not Club Eiffelbach, is it?
It's opposite. It's Fuel.
Fuel.
Yeah.
I've been to Fuel.
Fuel is across the road. Anyway, you should go there when things are back. I will buy you a pint.
I would do anything for a night in a filthy rock club.
So the impact on, obviously, you've got your staff, you can deal with that, but the impact on such a wide range of bands, some of them must have. What did you see your role as there in terms of what did you do for them, or what did they ask you to do? Did you have to do any kind of pastoral care, or?
No, I mean, I'll be honest, like I hadn't really. They weren't on my radar in terms of like who am I thinking about right now? Really, initially, I don't really. It's weird. There's some bands I have really good relationships with that I will talk to outside of any work concerns.
Yeah.
But really, I guess, I get personally, I think I felt my responsibilities throughout this are to my team and my family. I hadn't really thought too much about bands, but they, because I guess they've got other, they've got managers or labels or
of course
themselves looking after each other. But like, I can tell you that there isn't a one size fits all for our roster, because like you say, we've got people who are like in tiny clubs or doing massive stadiums. I think if you're in a band that there's a certain level where you can still comfortably get by without touring. That we've got a couple of band. I mean, I won't name names, but like one band member I spoke to, he was really positive. But he was like, look, this has actually been a really positive experience because it's made me realise that I can stay at home with my family and not go on tour and still have enough money to look after us, because they're selling merch and they get good revenue from their record sales. But then I've got another artist who, if they're not on the road, 200 days a year, 300 days a year, they're not making money. I was like, well, why have you considered like online lessons? Like maybe your fans would, and he was like, no, I'd literally rather drive for Tesco than do something like that. He doesn't want to get into the whole online lessons or whatever, that kind of stuff. So some bands will weather this storm. Some bands had just finished a massive tour, so we're like, sitting with some money in the bank, and some have had to take jobs, and I mean this isn't a band we work with, but like one of the first casualties I saw, remember Anathema announcing that they were calling it a day, which is really sad. Like a band, I guess Anathema probably right there on the precipice where they're a very successful band, but if they're not working, there isn't going to be
no money
for them. Exactly.
No, I was at the Palladium for their last UK gig. It'd be about 2 weeks' time, I think, the anniversary. I think it was around March the 7th, something like that. And you really thought that they were actually, after all this time, on the verge of really pushing on. So it was quite a shock. But when you look at it, they as you say, they are reliant on a continual momentum, aren't they?
Sorry, say that again?
I said Anathema, you know, they are reliant on that momentum to keep moving. Album tour. They have to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They need to be busy, and you know, I mean, I guess they didn't necessarily say they're split up forever, but
indefinite hiatus, I think the word.
Indefinite hiatus. Yeah, that does, like, to me, that's sort of.
Yeah.
There's a little ray of hope there.
Yeah.
But you know, even if it's an indefinite hiatus, like, what do you do in the meantime?
Well,
you know,
this is all they know, isn't it? That's the challenge. So I know they've got side projects, but they're not going to make the money that they were doing with that. So you got to the autumn, things started picking up in terms of albums started coming out again. I know that I've interviewed quite a lot of the bands that are on your list, and spoken to some of the guys and girls that have released stuff. Where are you now in terms of capacity wise in comparison to a year ago, in terms of percentages? How do you feel? You're obviously not quite as overwhelmed as you were last year.
No, I'm not as overwhelmed as I was last year. It is busy. It's just not. I don't know. It's really weird. It's hard to compare because you're also everything requires more effort, right? It used to be, especially with newer bands, you know, like we try to think about, well, what can we do to help a release stand out without touring? Because usually that's the one thing that, you know, really helps complement what you're doing at press, is when you've got the band in the country doing a tour and you've got all that stuff happening at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that we're kind of, I think, like, although we're not spending as much time going to gigs or doing promo days and stuff like that, I think we are trying, like, we're having to work harder and be a bit more creative in thinking about, well, how are we going to get this band to stand out a bit more? Or how are we going to make this somehow appealing to the media in a way that's other than, this band is releasing some new music, will you write about it? Because, you know, there's so much new music coming out.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you as well, is that the side effect of this, is that you're actually getting release after release after release to publicise, because they're not touring, and some bands are obviously virtually stacking up music without being able to tour. I don't
think that's happened. I think that it's definitely not. I don't think there's as many releases coming out. I think a lot of the bigger ones have sort of sat on stuff. I mean, like, the Pretty Reckless album was initially going to come out last year.
Yeah.
And it ended up going into this year because, you know, I guess initially when they decided to delay it, it was because they thought things would be open and touring in a few months. Now that no one can answer that question, I think, you know, some people have got on with it. Some people have decided to wait until they can tour. I mean, I know there's a couple of projects that we were about to start work on or close to starting work on, and they've just put everything on hold until they can tour again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's better than it was in the summer. I don't think it's quite where it was, like, this time last year, but it's definitely, I'm not as worried, you know, because in March I was like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Is everybody just going to stop everything, you know? Sure. So it was a little bit that was a bit stressful, but yeah, now it's, I don't know, I couldn't give you percentages, but it's I don't know. Well, maybe you want a percentage. I don't know. Maybe 8% or something. Yeah. I don't know.
All right. Sure. So a final question, because we said about half an hour of these interviews. It's been a long slog. We ask everyone where they feel they're going to be in 6 months, a year. Do you have an optimistic view? Do you have a pessimistic, or are you halfway in between with the vaccinations and everything? Do you feel that we will get live music in the near future, or do you feel we're looking at another year?
I think that we will see. What I think will happen is that we will see a few, like, a very small carefully handled events in the summer.
Yeah.
Because I don't see any reason why you couldn't have, especially if it's outdoors, you know, and the numbers are down, and, you know, you've got distancing coupled with an outdoor space or a well-ventilated space. I don't see why they can't do some gigs with you know, domestic acts. I would hope. I mean, they were talking about doing those. I was wanting to go and see Skin Dreads in one of those drive-throughs.
Yeah.
But they cancelled all of those.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe there'll be something similar to that. Maybe it won't be drive-through. Maybe it will be like that. Those shows we saw in Newcastle over the summer.
Yeah.
You know, it had. I don't know. I feel like there'll be something like that. I think come winter, come October, November, December, I'm almost certain we'll be back in lockdown again.
Yeah.
Or at least like we, you know, if we're not in the similar lockdown to what we are now, I can't see venues being open for business. And if they are, you know what, I can't see that happening in the winter. Basically, even if the whole country's vaccinated, possibly, but will we be? I'm not sure. I know we're doing very well there, and that is good. You know, I mean, like, I feel like it is great and it should be applauded that, like, we, you know, as a country, we're doing very well with the vaccination stuff. Although I do feel as well that was the only plan, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's fine. We'll just wait till the vaccine comes along and then everything will be okay. It's like, well, you could have made this problem much smaller by doing certain things that other people did. But anyway, so yeah. And then in terms of, like, actually stuff opening up properly, I don't even think we'll see proper international tours. It will be at least a year from now.
Yeah, sure.
Because even if we have everyone vaccinated here by, let's say, the end of the year, right, end of December, great, we can open up, blah, 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 the whole country's vaccinated. But what about, you know, how's Sweden doing? How's America doing? How's, you know, Australia doing? Like, all these bands that come and play here from other countries, it's a lot of that's going to be down to how their governments have handled it. So, you know, and then it won't even be just down to that, because you'll also, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of this in our scene as well, there'll be loads of musicians who are like, oh, I'm not having the vaccine, which will probably mean that they won't be able to come and play here.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that problem is tackled. But yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do think that we're not going to know really until probably this time next year.
Sure.
And I don't think that is necessarily a pessimistic view. I just think it's a realistic view.
No, I agree.
And I would love to see it happen sooner, believe me. But I'm just not getting myself excited about it just yet.
Sure. I think realistic is a much better way, because if you are pleasantly surprised, then you don't lose out, do you? So I think that's
I'd much rather be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
I'd love it if someone, by the way, Adam Redding's on. Let's go. Yeah, let's go.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, mate. Really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Paul.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you keep up to date with future episodes by subscribing to our channels. For more information on this podcast, or for all the latest music news, reviews, interviews and more, head over to our website, www.therazorsedge.rocks.